When we learn to move with martial intent, it means we're memorizing movements and sequence patterning, and that actually benefits your brain. Like, this is a school where respect is the most important thing. And if you walk in the door and you're already disrespectful, it's not the school for you. My father always said, Kung Fu's not just for fighting, it's to live a long life, but live a long, healthy life. All of the anti-Asian hate that was starting and building, and we all saw it. And it culminated with the Atlanta spa shooting. And to cut a long story short, I was really, really affected by that.
Yes, indeed. Kung Fu Chronicles rolling, baby. Sifu Quasi, what is good? I am back with another exciting and hopefully insightful interview for you guys. This time around, Sifu Mimi Chan will join us to drop some jewels on us, all right?
I'll drop that motherfucker.
And if you guys are unaware, Sifu Mimi is not only the head instructor of the Wah Lum Temple down in Orlando, but also the daughter of Grandmaster, the most famous, Chan Pui. Wah Lum Mantis, baby, you know the deal. So we got lots to talk about, including you guys dropping a little like down below, plus comment your thoughts, or just comment on who you'd like to see me interview next. And don't forget to stay to the end of the video so you guys can find out the answers to the 5 crucial questions we'll be asking Sifu Mimi. Let's go.
Got a special guest in studio today. We talked briefly before about having her on. She's a martial artist, instructor, former actor, podcaster, so many titles. Sifu Mimi Chan, how are you?
Hello, Sifu Quasi. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you.
Of course. So like real brief history. I used to, I trained with my Sifu Ken Edwards, who trained down at the Wah Lum Temple many years ago. And he's always told me so many great stories about your dad, Master Chan Pui, and then I've spoken, had a great opportunity to speak to Perry Young from the Warrior Clan. And he talks highly about you too. So we've got links in the chain, that we've got together. So I want to get started right away.
Small.
Yeah, no, absolutely, especially the martial arts world. So obviously you grew up in the martial arts, but just your start from the beginning, was it strictly at the temple, just growing up in martial arts and then going from there, or how did all those things work?
Yeah, I like to be teased by my family that I was basically coming out into the world kicking because I was a breech baby. And so I literally started my first few moments on this earth doing kicks.
I'm still kicking. I must be on Broadway.
But my father pretty much had me involved as soon as I could barely walk, I would say. And my mom would recall that he would stretch, as if baby needs stretching, but like I would make sure I have my splits, right? Like as soon as that was capable. So yeah, I'm really fortunate that I was kind of born into this Kung Fu lifestyle and was exposed to traditional Chinese martial art at such a young age. And so, yes, I trained at the Wah Lum Temple pretty much from when I was, like I said, stumbling around as a toddler. And of course, through that experience, I've had a lot of other training through different Grandmasters that were friends of my father. And he really was able to kind of, just give us tastes of other things. But really, Wah Lum is so dense that it really takes a lifetime to learn. And so that is my primary, area of study. I'm definitively not a master of that quite yet either, but to work on so many other things is really, really difficult to do.
Of course. Yeah. It's a mentality of like, we're forever students, right? No matter how far 100%. We go.
Yes.
Right.
100%.
So I'll ask the question anyway, but I think I already know, like when you were younger, did you have any aspirations to do like be a doctor or a lawyer, or was it just like, no, I'm just entrenched, I'm just immersed?
No, to be honest, when I was younger, it was just such a part of my daily routine. I don't think that I considered, not ever doing Kung Fu, but also I will say, forced to do Kung Fu. As a child, you still want to be a child. And when other kids go and hang out after school, or play in the neighborhood back when people played in the neighborhoods. I don't know that I see that so much anymore, but
not so much.
aging myself, of course, but watching cartoons after school, things like that. And so my existence was very different, because after school, my school was actually, I had to get picked up and dropped off, and so I was at the temple pretty much right after school, and was there till adult classes were finished. And so it was very much as a youngster, there was definitely a time where I did not want to do Kung Fu, but it was not like I ever had the option. It was always part of my schedule, my routine, and my life. And I think by the time I was old enough to go to college and choose my degrees and things like that, by then I had already made a cognitive, definitive decision for myself. But as a teenager, young teenager, this is not what I really wanted to do. But as I grew up, I started to kind of see, my path unfold. And so I don't know that I had another career in mind. I have a few things that I dabble in now that I think, gets my creativity, urges like Matt, and my need and desire to do other things like the social justice work. But I think that by the time I was a quote unquote adult, I made the definitive decision that I would carry on the tradition and the legacy that my father started.
No, understood. And it's such a rich legacy. So for people that aren't as familiar with Wah Lum versus, say, 7-Star, what are some of the main differences?
Yeah, well, the Wah Lum system is a family style system that my father learned from his master, who was a traveling bodyguard / I don't want to say assassin, but
Not assassins.
He was one of those, he's right out of the Kung Fu movies, and so he came from the north, though. So while my father is from southern China, he was exposed to a northern style. And so in northern Kung Fu, in northern praying mantis, it's my grandmaster's, my father's master, his family style combined with northern mantis, and at the Wah Lum Temple where he trained. And so it's also called the Wah Lum Temple Northern Praying Mantis system. And so for us, it's a lot of leg use. It's a lot of, there are some acrobatics, which lent later to, of course, my career in entertainment and performing. But there's definitely differences because of the emphasis more on that northern style versus kind of a southern style of mantis.
Yeah. Oh my God. When I used to study briefly, Wah Lum was those stances and holding those stances used to be oh my God, my knees would be shaking, wobbling after an hour plus of class. And that was just an hour plus. So I never had the opportunity to train at the temple where it was all day and
Yes. We tease that it's we say that it's northern, our northern style, 70%, legs and emphasis and 30% hand movements. But we're sometimes it just feels 100% legs and 30%. Yeah. Because it's very, very leg intensive. We have a lot of people that cross train, and we're always look, you don't need to do leg day. If you're doing Wah Lum, you don't need to do leg day. You're going to get it here. So you can focus on your full body stuff, but it's very leg intensive. It is true.
It's so funny you say that. Yeah, it's so funny you say that, because years ago when I first started training in Kung Fu, it was I had a trainer just for the gym. And whenever I knew I was going to the school after, I was I can't do legs today, bro. I just can't do it, because I know I would just be in horse stance with the pole across my legs. And it's my knees I can't do it.
Yep.
So a day in the life of the temple. I know we just finished celebrating Chinese New Year. How did that all go for you? And usually you guys make it a big celebration, right?
We do. Actually, here in Central Florida, my father was the first to start that. And it was, I think, 1980 we started down here. So 81 would be that first Lunar New Year, Chinese New Year celebration with a, Asian American population of practically none at that time in the area. So it was really something that we had to educate the community on. And fast forward, almost 44 years later, it's fascinating to see how it's become a celebrated holiday, not just for the Asian American and Pacific Islander community, but for everyone here. So It used to be like a 1 week thing, and now it lasts for like 5 weeks because there's just not enough weekends for the festivals that want to have their events and the people that want to get together. Obviously there's always food, and that's
Yes.
what brings us together. But we do so many shows, everything from community shows to like Kennedy Space Center, where, you know, we have a lot of organizations and businesses and corporations now that have like, you know, DEI groups and resource groups that want to celebrate and honor some of these holidays and learn more about the traditions. So it's been really fascinating to see that evolve over time, but it is a very busy time. Because in Orlando, we're still able to do so. We have hundreds and thousands of firecrackers that go off at the beginning of the day. We have the 8 lions.
Right.
This year was the year of the dragon, so we had the dragon out. So it was a lot of humans running around, but it was a really, really lovely time, and we're always really grateful to kind of kick off the year with something so special for us.
Yeah, I actually have a quick clip of probably one of your older years, some line dancing. It's really fun to watch. Synchronization, everything.
Yeah, we're so grateful in Florida that we can kind of do outdoor shows all year round, because
Yes,
our
the
Boston
weather.
schools, we've seen them do lion in the snow, and I don't even know what that would look like. I can't even imagine. So yeah, we're really grateful that we have the temple and that we can host a lot of people to come and celebrate with us. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Right. Yeah. So talking a little briefly about your dad, because there's so much legacy there. You guys actually you put together a documentary, which is awesome, by the way. I actually checked it out.
Thank you.
How did that project all start for you? And was it your brainchild, or walk me through that a little bit?
Yeah, so in the 90s, when I started to kind of, I finished my school, I decided I was going to be at the temple full time. I did a stint out in Hollywood and things like that, but I really, really knew my path was like being at the temple. And I figured one way for me to ensure that all of my father's footage and archival footage and all of the resources that he would like slowly bring out of the garage in Florida in 100-degree weather, where I'm like, what, this is super 8mm film, it's gonna be destroyed. And so I was like, I need to preserve all of this. And so I just started a catalog over the years. And it was just like something in the back of my mind that said, okay, one day I'll sit down. It's kind of like that novel that that's coming, right? Like I'm going to sit down and I'm going to do this project. And as I got more experience in just kind of the film industry and world, I had to kind of self-teach myself, like the whole editing bit and all that. And back in 2000s, it was not as user-friendly as it is now.
Right.
So, but it was always in the back of my mind that I wanted to make sure that his story was told in a visual way, because of course, there's been a lot of interviews, the early Inside Kung Fu magazines, Black Belt magazines, everyone always talks about seeing him in those magazines and just having those memories from the 70s and 80s. But Kung Fu is such a visual art form, and he's such a visual performer and so dynamic. And so I knew that like video and like telling his story through a documentary was the way to go. And so I think it was like 10 years of just compiling footage, and then one day just ripping off the Band-Aid and then sitting myself down and saying like, this is it, I'm just gonna focus on this and I'm gonna work on it. And yeah, so we finally got that done in 2012 was the quote unquote premiere for it. So yeah, it was quite an undertaking. And like any other piece of art, when you look at it now, you're like, oh, I would have done this, or I would change this, I'd make this better. But otherwise, I think if I had kept going down that path, it would still not be released. So yeah, I'm grateful that it's out in the world and that everyone can watch it on Amazon and it can be shared with everyone. And it did have distribution for a while through different channels like Hulu and things like that. So yeah, it's been great to be able to share this with so many people.
It's really cool because your dad is still active, right? He's still teaching from time to time, or is he semi-retired?
Yeah. So he's mostly he works on the Tai Chi program, but he will get in there if he's walking by and the Kung Fu students aren't doing something right. He will make sure to let them and us know. And he is actually just still, as he says at the end of the film, he goes to the temple every day. He lights his incense to pay respect to the ancestors and show gratitude. And and he cleans the temple every morning. Here in Florida, there's a lot of trees and leaves, and his goal is to make sure that they do not touch the ground. And so he's just really always caretaking for Wah Lum in whatever way that means in, different iterations. But yeah, he's still very physically active. So we're grateful for that.
Yeah, but it's so funny. My Sifu told me this story years ago, and it always I always kept it. He said when he was down at the Wah Lum Temple, as a bunch of the guys were out there, and you guys have the poles that go all the way up and they come down. So he was just he said, yeah, guys were struggling, and it was hot summer days. They go up halfway. I'm I can't go up a third of the way. And he said one day your dad just came out. It's what's wrong? It's Sifu, it's so hard. And he said your dad just hopped all the way up to the top and did a stance that came all the way down. He's like, but whatever, I'm an old man. Anyway, carry on.
Honestly, I think I saw him doing that till he was about 70 at the very highest level. And yeah, his age does never usually reflect his physicality anyway, but it's pretty remarkable, really, because even the lower level, you get up and you test your balance, you don't realize how different it is to be grounded. And we go on cruises a lot as a family, and even just training at sea, you just feel your equilibrium. So training for, challenging for balance is definitely difficult and a lot of fun, but it's pretty rough. It's pretty hot down here too. So
no, I know. So Florida, yeah, you guys are in Orlando. I actually lived in Florida for a year and a half years ago in Miami. So I know it's that.
Oh, it's hot.
It gets hot. Yeah, the summer months, forget it. It's you can't exist without air conditioning. I don't know how people do that. But yeah, it's insane. But yeah, take me back a little, because I know you were actually born in Boston. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So how did you guys actually move over to Orlando, or was that just your dad's tired? I'm tired of the cold. I got to get out of here.
That was a big part of it. So I was born in Boston, and most of my memories of the time there are dreamlike flashes, because I was only 2. But basically, there was 2 reasons. One, it was really cold. So I was born between the big nor'easter, the 2 huge blizzards of the time.
South Boston.
Oh, you're a f***ing genius, huh? Who forged your transcript, kid?
And I think getting to the hospital was a challenge. And just, my mom is from Jamaica, right? And my dad is from southern China. And so they did not want to be in the cold. They realized living up there was just not really for them. My mom's family was here in Florida, so she had a lot of her brothers and sisters that had immigrated also and then ended up moving to Florida. So my father also, though, really wanted to find a place he could build that first Kung Fu temple, that place where people could live and train, and also just kind of an homage to the Grandmaster Chan's temple in China, and just that whole traditional aspect of it. I think he wanted to expand. He wanted to find somewhere that would be able to accommodate that. And Boston, Chinatown, there's no space in the city. It is not there's acres and acres of land for you to look at. And back when we moved here in, in 1980, it was just woods, trees, animals. It was very rural. Right. And so there was a lot of opportunity to build what he had envisioned. And it was just too cold in Boston.
No, trust me, I'm actually a native New Yorker, so I completely get it. I live in Los Angeles now, but yes, I totally get it. It's those winter months are brutal. So for you, you're actively teaching. Is it how many times a week? Are you just every day you're in there pretty much? Or
yeah, we are there 7 days a week when it's crazy. 5 days a week when it's a great week, and then 6 days is kind of our normal. So we have classes Monday through Saturday, but as I told you, through Lunar New Year, literally we had shows every weekend. We often have a lot of other things too with all the theme parks here, so there's always activity going on.
And is there still that pressure, because you're, obviously Sifu Mimi, and they a lot of people know you when people come to the temple? Is it okay, is she still as good as she was back when she was 20? Do you still feel that, or is it just hey, I'm just do my thing?
When you say pressure, I feel the pressure doesn't really come from students per se. I think the pressure just comes more from external forces, and mainly myself, right? I probably put the most pressure on myself than anybody. And I think the great thing about our school is that most people that come in are there because they're drawn to something. And a lot of times it's the culture and the tradition and the philosophy that we kind of encompass. So we don't really get a very, heavy, challenging type of personality, or people that are too what's the word I was looking for? Just like kind of in their head and just like, it's really nice to have the attitude that walks in, because we kind of set the tone from the beginning. Like, this is a school where respect is the most important thing. And if you walk in the door and you're already disrespectful, it's not the school for you. So I feel like that kind of negates any of that type of pressure for that. I mean, in all honesty, I think as I've gotten older, it's probably a little easier, especially as a female teacher, because when you're younger and you're 20, they see you as a little kid and like, what do you know? You're only 20 years old, you don't know anything, and you're a woman. So, there's a lot of dynamic there that I think I probably had more struggle with. As I've gotten older, I think you gain a little more respect because you're a little older.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And all the experience you have. I mean, so you mentioned before, I was going to mention this because I thought it was so cool. Your mom is Jamaican descent.
Yeah.
My stepmom is Jamaican, so the culture is just right. Yeah. So obviously you were exposed to both Chinese culture, Jamaican culture. What's that like? Because it's so different dynamically. The foods, the culture. Yeah. What's that like growing up?
Yeah. So I do identify like as Chinese Jamaican because really, when I had mentioned earlier, my mom's entire family is here, and she's one of 9. So her 7 out of the 8 siblings were in Orlando, Florida. So I had 28 first cousins growing up. And so as a Jamaican family, that it is a lot of getting together, a lot of eating, a lot of cooking.
I am from Jamaica. What one? Why you cut it so short? Like, that sounds Chinese. What one?
I had my Kung Fu temple where I learned my Chinese heritage, but familially, I didn't have any of my father's side of the family to be around. Like, I didn't know any cousins growing up. I'd met a couple of the uncles when I'd finally go back to China and things like that. And Hong Kong, I would then start to meet the extended family on the Chan side. But the Wong, which is my mom's maiden name, like that is actually how I grew up. My mom was in a reggae and soca band throughout her whole life. And so every New Year's, that's what we did. So it was very much a Caribbean upbringing. And so most of the food I eat actually now, even on a daily basis, is Jamaican food. Like, I cook mostly Jamaican food, actually.
Wow. Okay. So we're doing curry chicken. We're doing
oxtail curry chicken.
Oxtail. Oh, fish. All right. Okay. Man, I gotta get me some Sifu Mimi oxtail, dude. I love oxtail.
Me too. It is my comfort food for sure.
Oh, so cool. So tell me how important, or I know is it still an aspect of training? Because I went down there, man, in 2018 to Nick Screamer's tournament. How big is it still? Yeah, how big is part of the culture down there for the Wah Lum Temple? For the competition side is what I'm getting into.
Yeah,
is that still a big deal? Yeah.
Well, the Wah Lum system as a whole, we have schools across the world, and I know they participate in various tournaments wherever, because it's not as easy. I think back in the day, it felt like teams traveled more because there was no other option. But now it seems like there's so much more regionally. So it enables more people to be able to support those regional events. And of course, because this one is in Orlando, Florida, we always go to the WMAC tournament, and that's actually coming up soon. And so our kids are getting ready for that. And it's nice because those that can't afford to get on a flight or even take a road trip and book hotels, it's really nice that there is something here for them to participate in. And so, that is kind of an annual event, as well as some of the ones in the Northeast area. We're still pretty rooted there. But yeah, tournaments are still a big part of the training. And just, I think because of the temple being in Central Florida and it being so theme park heavy, entertainment heavy, we're very performance geared as well. We have a lot of opportunity to do professional shows. So we have like a team that that performs professionally, right? And so it's like a different level than just like running out on the street and like performing for the community. We have like a really professional team that goes out and actually does this. Like it could be a career if they wanted it to be, type of thing. So it's really nice that we have the ability to offer students like a different dynamic. But tournaments are a lot of fun for the students. I'll be honest, personally, it's like, you know, when you've been doing this so long, you're like, oh, another tournament. But
You're
it is
a little,
nice.
I know.
It is nice to see the younger generations come out. It's also nice to see old friends and people, because that's often a time where all of the masters and Sifus get together. So it is also a little bit of a reunion. So that is always nice. But
the networking part, yes.
yeah, just to say, you know, say hello and just see how people are doing. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I've always, you know, it's kind of like for me, it was like a love-hate relationship with tournaments. It's like, yes, it's like now you go out another tournament. But even back then when I was coming up, it was how you kind of got the nerves out and were able to just get in front of an audience and just focus a lot more, because it's like when you're doing your forms on your own and everything, you know, it's like you mess up, no big deal. But then when you're in front of like all these people, the judges, it's like you got to get the butterflies out and just go do it. So
you don't want to disappoint your Sifu.
Of course. And even like the younger students coming up under you, right? It's like, oh my God, what are they gonna do? It's like messing up. It's like, so that, not to even use the word pressure, but it like helps to hone you a little bit. So I've always thought, you know, like the tournament side is pretty important. So did you enjoy it more when you were younger, probably? Going to tournaments?
I feel like for tournaments, I think I just preferred performing more than the competition circuit. And I think it was because of the joy, right? As a performer, and this is why I kind of was drawn to like acting and that side, because you just really like to evoke emotion and bring joy to people. So for Chinese New Year, I always tell my students and my team, I said, we get to go out there and bring people joy and bring people good luck, and people are happy to see us. Like this is a gift and a privilege. And so with tournaments, like, yes, it's competitive, and also when you're competing and then you've never quote unquote lost, whatever that means, right? Whatever the decision of those 5 people that judged you that day decided your score was the best. Because I really teach my students that the tournament training is for the tournament training. Yes, you do the tournament, you might get a medal or a trophy, that's fine. And I definitely believe in like winning and losing. I don't believe in like everybody wins. Like everyone wins. Yeah, no, right. I don't believe in that because it is a competition. But I do believe everyone wins because the training and the improvement you get is what you come away with. Enjoyed being a part of a team. I enjoyed that, like, we always went in as a really strong unit. Wah Lum always did very well in tournaments. I'm proud that they continue to do so. You know, and back when I competed with men because there weren't always women's divisions. So there would be like 70 people in an event. And because, you know, there's not that many traditional Chinese tournaments back then too. There weren't that many. So it'd be like 50 competitors or something. So it was a really different environment for sure in the tournament circuit than it is now. I think it's a little bit more structured to be inclusive of everybody and age ranges and styles and all of that. So I think it's you know, it's come a long way.
Yeah, no, I agree. In fact, since you brought that up, I'd spoken to Cynthia Rothrock a little while ago, and she had said the same thing coming up. It was just like, you don't have the opportunity as a woman. Unfortunately, back then, it was like it wasn't as inclusive. You just competed with men, and that was just how it went.
I entered a competition then, and at that time, it was just men, all ranks. They didn't have it divided by levels.
So a little bit of your old stuff here. It's cool.
I look so young with my braid. That was my signature competition hair.
Yes. Nice.
Mainly because I could do that one myself.
Okay, nice. Yeah, that was awesome stuff. Is it fun, like, just looking back and kind of going, like, you're almost like your body of work sometimes? Do you ever just, like, take time and go through, like, some of your stuff and be like, wow? It's like,
I'm a little critical. I'm judging myself right now.
Oh, no, okay.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm going, wow, this is probably on VHS somewhere is what I think. kicking. That's how old.
Right on.
No, it is fun to watch because I don't do it very often. So this is actually quite a treat. Thank you for sharing that.
No, of course. It's and for me, it's good to have the video archive. Like twofold for me at least, and probably for you. Like recording the benefit of being able to go over and check yourself and kind of see, because you can't see yourself when you're doing it, right? Even if you're looking in the mirror. So that benefit, but then also to see how you progressed over the years. It's like you look at old footage and be like, oh wow, I used to do it and you thought you were amazing back then, and it's like now you've evolved, and it's like, not saying I'm amazing now, but it's just like, oh god, I've come a long way. So it's good to kind of have the check and balance, I think.
Of course. I mean, as a quote unquote, we're all aging, right? So as aging martial artists, you also realize, I am not doing back handsprings anymore, by the way. That era for me has ended. And I love looking at it and going, thank God it was on video, because now everyone can see I did it. I did do them. I did multiple ones, I don't do those anymore. I don't do back handsprings anymore. I'm like, there's only so many times, because back then we trained at the temple. There's no AC. It's a pretty hard floor, or there's concrete, right? And now I hope we train smarter, but there's certain things you don't do. But in terms of the evolution of who you are as a martial artist, you start to realize what's important. It's not like the flip, right? It's like that internal understanding, the understanding of your body and how to use your power and your leverage, and how to use, especially as you grow into who you're becoming, your body changes. So you have to be able to adapt. So it's funny because I can see, right, places where it's obviously I'm not sprightly, I'm not doing backflips, but I can see where it's that's an immature martial artist in terms of the movements, right?
Yes. No. And listen, I get it. There's a lot of stuff too. Is I may once in a while try a back handspring, but not the way I used to do it anyway.
Oh, yeah.
There's things you just let go.
I don't want to have whiplash for 3 days. It's okay. Yeah. I can leave that to the youngsters. I'm fine.
But let me talk about it, because I'd be remiss if I didn't. I know you got to talk about it so much, but obviously your stint in acting, and started it with Mulan, being the person that was basically, they used you for the actual character.
Yes.
And I know basically because the Disney studios were there and everything, and so long ago, I know, but just give me the brief story of it. I know you've talked about it to death.
I get it, and honestly, I've learned to embrace that. Disney, being a Disney princess part, because I feel like it's taken 3 of us to make a Mulan, and I feel like I'm a very small part of that, but grateful to be a part of that, and so I'm always happy to kind of share that connectivity. But yes, because we're in Orlando, Florida, and at that time Animation Studios was here doing projects and films, it was a part of the era where Disney would bring in anything authentic around the project. So they were bringing in a lot of atmosphere for them, and we actually went to do a Tai Chi seminar for the animation team, so they could just kind of see some of the movement, but also kind of just get the ambience of being absorbed into the Chinese culture. And at that time, they were still looking for the quote unquote face of Mulan, or how they wanted her to look and be. And Mark Hen, who of course is a genius animator who did all the Disney princesses time, was there, and they brought me in to meet him. And to quote his words in one of the articles, it's Mulan walked into the room, and I felt immediately this was the right fit, because at the time I was around the same age as her character would be, and I did martial arts. My father did martial arts. It was just a lot of parallels, but he just kind of liked the essence of it, I guess. And then from there, I did character modeling, where I would go in and do still poses, and the animation team would draw me and practice. And then the martial arts video reference especially was crucial, because I would, my cousin and I, he was Shang, we choreographed all the martial arts sequences, and then we would do them as if they were filming for a movie. So we'd have to wear kind of similar movement for the skirt if she's going to kick or whatever, or if she's in the pants. So I had to do all the choreography, and they'd video that and then use that as reference. This is before motion capture, so no mocap. This was right on the cusp of it. I think it was, the technology was around, but they were really proud that was not used for this, that this was literally the artist just watching over and over and over, and then drawing from that. And so that was obviously an incredible experience. And at the time, I don't think I realized how long that would stick with me, and how incredible it even was then.
It's iconic. It's Disney. It's one of their last quote unquote animated movies, right? At the time, because it was a 98. right?
Yes,
I think.
traditional animation. It was one of the last ones. Was all done in Orlando, which was huge for the studios here. And I always like to say, first Disney princess that saves the day and didn't have to get saved, right? So she's kind of changed the narrative for a lot of the really amazing, strong female Disney princess characters to come. And, always proud of that.
Yeah, it's so cool. I mean, I wasn't really a big Disney kid, but I saw some things, but I remember because of my love for martial arts, I was like, I gotta see Mulan. And back then, not knowing even your connection to it, it was just cool to watch it. And it did seem, I think it connected with me, just it seems like some of these moves are really authentic. They must have actually gotten real martial artists to do this versus just animating and going off of stills or whatever. So it was really fun. As you look back, if you've ever checked the movie out from time to time, do you look back and go, are you critical of did they get that move right, or did I could have done this better, or did you really just are pleased with the whole thing?
I'm pleased overall with the whole thing because I feel like for the time especially, it was a real breakthrough moment, and it was something that was very pivotal. I will say there's always the fun fact in this, and I don't know if we'll get to it in this part, but where she holds the sword, I did the game fingers, and they changed it to her doing this, right? And so a lot of times I'll pose like that for the, for Comic Con things, whatever, but they did change that because I think it made sense for them, for her to just do that movement. But again, I feel like also there's some artistic liberty for animators that I don't know how to draw anything, right? And so I don't know how things to play for animation. So I feel like I always like to talk about that because there's such a specificity to the traditional weapon part of it, right? But I remember this so clearly, at the time we did have a quote unquote coordinator, but he was more an expert in there it is.
Oh, right? There it is. More of an
expert
the one finger.
Yeah, the one finger. It should be here, right?
Don't concentrate on the finger.
Stuff. So he kind of was just you guys decide what to do, but here's what the scene is, and then we would choreograph it. And so I think if it were done now, Disney probably would be you're the choreographer, you guys do this. And at the time, I think they felt like they needed to hire, a Hollywood guy, right? And I think these are the changes. So I actually, don't feel bitter about it because I feel like even for the time, we have to get to where we get to in slow increments, unfortunately. So yeah.
No, absolutely. Did you ever get to meet any of the cast, the original cast back then?
No, with the audience. Well, I have met Ming-Na a multitude of times. We have a Mulan reunion ever so often. Nice. She comes to Epcot to do the candlelight where they do the narration for the Christmas story thing. And so whenever she is in town, we do a little photo thing. So several years ago, I met her for the first time and was introduced to her, and she was just kind of overwhelmed, and meeting a fellow Mulan counterpart is always amazing. And so that was really special. She's so wonderful and gracious, and it's really cool to have any kind of connection. So
it's got to be. So was this the springboard for you getting into more acting? Was this okay, I really want to try this? Because I dug up one of your reels here.
I think so. Yeah, oh gosh. I think so. It really gave me a feeling okay, here's something I feel I can put my martial arts knowledge and stuff, but then I really always have a desire to be creative, right? I think that this was a way for me to be creative, and I think it was fun to kind of explore that. Unfortunately for me personally, right? If I were 19, 20 now, in this era where Asian American actors are finally getting the opportunities and things like that, I think it would be very different. I had a very different experience in Hollywood from when I went out. I had a positive experience in the fact that I had some really wonderful friends and people that I met. But in terms of career path, I realized it just really wasn't for me, and my heart was truly at the Wah Lum Temple, right? So there was also that pull. So I felt at the time it was a very either or decision, whereas now a lot of the actors that we know, they can live where they want, and then they can do their reels and send them in, and it's just such a different world, right? But at the time it was very much an either or, and I absolutely picked being at the Wah Lum Temple. So
no, sweet. I get it. I've talked to people who who delved in it a little bit, and I liked it, but I especially I'm not sure if you're familiar with Grandmaster Dennis Brown. He teaches out in DC. But, okay, yeah. So he told me the same kind of thing. He's like, it's like at the time to stay in movies, I would have had to stay in Hong Kong. I've been away from my family and all this.
They kept asking me to come back and do movies and stuff like that in Hong Kong and different places. But, you know, I would have had to do what Cynthia Rothrock did. They wanted me to move my family to Hong Kong. But I had, you know, I've always wanted to do what I'm doing now. And
I think it's one of those things where it's like that freaking fork in the road. It's like, go one way or the other. Can't do both, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, especially when you're taking on something like, I'm going to continue the tradition of the Wah Lum system. It's not just like, oh, I run a part-time gym, or, you know, then I feel like it's a different type of thing. This is certainly a world that we're kind of involved in. It's not kind of a hobby. But I think, again, maybe if the timing was different, there could have been a best of both worlds and be able to do two things. But
right. You're absolutely right, because now it's so much easier to do things from your home base versus having to be physically there. So I'm gonna take a little detour off martial arts for a minute, because there's so much to talk about with you, and I don't want to run out of time. But on the political front, because I don't mind talking about it, and I think it's really amazing. You got this bill passed down there, and in a red state like Florida, your AAPI bill. I want you to talk a little bit about that and what that encompasses, because I'm just reading about it. I'm like, especially with the climate down there, you've got a governor that really like got critical race theory out of schools. And how did this all springboard and start? Yeah, just give me some history.
Yeah, thank you for asking about that. It is certainly part of my passion as well. I think as a martial artist, one of our responsibilities is to fight for what's right, protect those that, you know, need help and help others, and, you know, stop bullying and things like that. And so that martial arts principle certainly should carry over into our daily actions. Like at our school, Kung Fu means hard work, and we want our kids to work hard. And so for me, it just made sense to springboard into social justice, because there are so many things that are upside down, especially in the state of Florida. And so there's a lot of other causes that I am involved in, and a lot of the other organizations, but in particular, the Asian American History Bill was really important, because at the rise of the pandemic, we were seeing, of course, a rise of anti-Asian hate crimes from all of the rhetoric that was, you know, said about the COVID, and, you know, all of the anti-Asian hate that was starting and building, and we all saw it. And it, you know, it culminated with the Atlanta spa shooting. And to cut a long story short, I was really, really affected by that. I was really taken aback. And when my community came to me, the kids, parents of kids, senior citizens telling me that they were scared to go grocery shopping, or kids telling me they were getting made fun of in school and told to go back to their country, and repeating things that they had heard, right? It was super heartbreaking, but also alarming, because I am, as a martial artist, defensive. I don't want to be reactive. I want to be proactive. I want to be preventative, right? And so I researched, like, how can we prevent this? Like, it's happening. Like, if you're in the situation, here's XYZ, you know, here's intervention training, here's all of this, but how can we really solve the problem? And when I saw that education was the number one solution to combating hate and ignorance, I thought back to my education, which was a public school education for the most part here in Florida. Like, I went to private school through 5th grade, and then in 6th grade through 12th, I went to public school. And I realized I have never learned anything about Asian American history other than the really small snippets you'll get, you know, like there were Chinese railroad workers or something like that. I think that was all I learned. And I started to uncover so many amazing things that I had never learned, like even just Florida history, Florida Asian American history, that there were Floridians that have changed the landscape of and helped build the foundation of this country. And so many facts that I realized it was something that we needed to look into. And then when I saw in the Florida law, now whether it's being implemented to its fullest is a whole nother thing. But in the Florida law, Holocaust education, African American history, Hispanic heritage, women's contributions, like those are all things that were in the law. And I was like, oh, well, this makes sense. So we don't even have a chance of getting and joining that fight to join up in solidarity with all of the other heritages and all of the other history that's being taught. We don't even have an option. We have no voice. And so I saw this as an opportunity to start the petition, and then 2.5 years later, I found myself like each year going to Tallahassee, fighting for this, working on legislation, something I'd never done, and working really hard, using all my kung fu to get it done. I really and bringing the community together to get this bill passed. And now Asian American and Pacific Islander history is required for our K through 12 schools. And so it is now listed alongside all of our other histories so that we can hopefully all learn together.
Yeah, that's awesome. Big, great. Especially, like I said, in a state like yours, having lived there for that stint. And it's not to knock it because I love Florida, but it's like, let's face it, you've got pockets that are progressive. Like Miami, Orlando, but you've got a big state, and it's kind of like California. People forget it's like you've got these big, deep red pockets. It just is what it is. So there's a lot of people that are on that conservative side where it's just like, yeah, no, we just see this one way, and it's like one way only. It's not very inclusive, and you're just like, but wait a minute, I'm here. I'm a tax-paying citizen too. So.
I've always been here as long as they've been here, unless we're talking about Native Americans. Like they're the only ones that really can have a say with like being invaded and like their country, quote unquote, right? Like we are all immigrants and we are all descendants of immigrants, and to ignore that fact is pretty ignorant. And so yeah, I think education is definitely the key. We have a long way to go, but at least we have a starting point now, and we are in the conversation.
Right. I was going to say you set the spark off. So props to you on that. Big deal. Congratulations again. I want to talk about a little bit too about podcasting because you're like me, like do a podcast. You've been doing it for a while. How'd you?
No, oh my gosh, with all your archive footage, how much work. Wow.
Oh my God. No. But you've been doing it long because you've been doing it for 6 years. I've only been doing it for 3 on YouTube. And you've had a podcast for a longer time and had so many cool guests. How did you, like you were talking about your need to also have other creative outlets. Was this one of those things that's like, I need to do this as well to kind of separate?
Yeah, well, at the beginning, I wanted to have a voice that was actually separate of Sifu Mimi, because at the time we were like, oh, I need to be able to kind of advocate for what was happening. So really, it was part of the social justice issue. Okay. Like, so after 2016's election, I was really frustrated. I was frustrated with how immigrants were looked upon, how we were being treated, how all of the laws that looked like they were, and I didn't even know at that time how bad it was going to get and how divisiveness there was going to be. And so at the time I started it as actually culture chat, which was to just introduce immigrant stories, to talk to people, to share and build empathy. Like that was the main mission. And then it evolved where as the world got more intense and as the world became where we saw like America, especially like the decisions that were being made, the laws that were being passed, I realized, you know what? I don't need to separate Sifu Mimi Chan from this like podcast persona. It's like, it's really all in one, because I feel like what I said earlier, like as the martial artist, we are here to advocate for those that can't advocate for themselves. Like my sister is special needs. She was born like barely a pound. She's a pound and like 6 ounces or something like that, 800 grams. She's had a lot of struggle. And so I always felt like we're here to be supportive of those around us. And if that's the case, and as things got worse, I realized like I don't want to separate it. So I changed it to Sifu Mimi Chan Show because I didn't want people to see it as a separate issue. I wanted them to like, no, this is me, and this is also the Wah Lum culture. Like it didn't become political to me. It became about humanity, and it became about moral and ethical compass versus this is politics. And I think that it's very important to differentiate because of the lines that were drawn in the sand, not by me, by others. And so I like I needed to stand on one side of it. And it honestly, it just kept getting worse. Like after the George Floyd murder, after the, all of it, it just kept getting worse. So I wanted to ensure that my voice was very clear. And then I have selfishly invited on all of my favorite comic book guests, artists, and actors, and people I just love and find interesting to talk to. I've been very fortunate. Yeah.
I was going to say it's such a cool mixed bag because, and listen, I'm about to nerd out with you for like half a second because I grew up on comic books.
Man, you come right out of a comic book.
and a huge Jim Lee fan. You just had Jim Lee on. I'm so jealous.
A part of our AAPI project that we just did, I wish I had one. I have like something under my desk, is we did an Asian American history activity book for kids. And Jim Lee drew, you can kind of see it behind me, the Pui Chan. But yeah, we're basically fundraising, getting these books hopefully into schools so kids can learn about our Asian American pioneers here in Florida. And I got all my comic book friends to draw in them. And it's so cool to have like the caliber of AAPI artists in this book is beside myself. Totally geeking out.
I mean, I grew up on, yes, I love Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman,
X-Men?
but the books, but I was just about to say the books that really were like near and dear to my heart, X-Men, Teen Titans, those books. X-Men, obviously, Jim Lee, Chris Claremont, and not to super nerd out because it's a whole different, but I love comics.
We'll have a separate comic book geek out podcast.
Right. We're going to have to do that different, but it's just, it's just so cool. I know it's an unfair question. Do you have a favorite guest or like any standout moments maybe?
My favorite guest is my husband, Sifu Oscar Agramonte.
Nice. You know, I'm glad you brought him up. Is that because he also trains kung fu martial arts with you? Is that an easier thing? Because I often wonder, because like my girlfriend does no martial arts. She's not even interested in that side. Like we've got like. But having a spouse that's also does what you do, does that make life a little easier?
It does. So we met in high school. So he's known me my whole life. We pretty much have grown up together in a sense, but he always did some sort of martial art, not my martial art. And then when we started to date, not just because of that, but also just like life and how it took him. It's just like realized, okay, now I'm stepping away from this. And like for me, I always knew the person that would be stuck with me, quote unquote, would need to understand my world. It is not a typical world. It's not even just a kung fu school. It's a kung fu system, right? It is more than just here at the temple. We are so fortunate that we are branching across, different countries and that we're connected through this. And I think it's really special. But so I knew my partner would definitely need to understand it, enjoy it, and love it. And so my husband and I were very fortunate, known him since 1996. So it's a long time. I'm pretty sure he knows me pretty well. But yeah, it does make it easier. But I think it's because of him that it's easier. It's his personality. So he's able to learn from his wife. Whereas I don't know that a lot of people can say that, right? A lot of people can't learn from their spouse. And so I think it's more, he's the easygoing one and he makes it easier. But it's great. I mean, basically we work together and it works and I feel supported and I definitely could not do all this without him. So yeah.
Very nice.
So he's my favorite podcast guest.
Okay. All right. Listen, very PC answer, but I'll take it. I get it.
Safe. I can't even choose from the comic book side, but what I will say is on the comic book side, Stan Sakai was one of the first that gave me the time of day. Like he didn't like who are you, or once I dropped Stan Sakai's name though, everyone was like, oh, you had Stan Sakai, he's a gem, right? Everybody loves him. Like, no.
There you go. So that's awesome. It's actually funny you say it's a good transition, because I was going to bring this up really quickly. So someone who gave me a shot, to interview off the cuff, I reached out to Perry Young on the Humbug when Warrior just started. I know we've got a mutual love for the show, so I was going to talk to you about that a little bit. But yeah, he was one of the first in the cast that was like, yeah, sure, I'll do an interview.
Suddenly I found myself acting when I moved to New York City. It just seemed like the natural progression.
That's Perry. I always share this same story, but when I was up in New York, we met up for coffee to hang out, really tea, because I don't drink coffee, but we met up, and 30 seconds later, in comes Carlin, was like, hey, another guy that knew my dad in Boston, he's the Chinatown activist, and then he's like, oh, there's a rally tomorrow. The next day, Perry and I are at a anti-Asian hate rally together. This is so Perry. He's just so accessible, but also so grounded. He's amazing. He's the real deal.
Right. And you guys are both activists and everything, so it's a mutual connection.
Yeah, we have a lot in common.
But tell me really quickly, what about the show is just did you watch the show from day one? And what about the show just connects with you?
Oh, I love the show. Beyond the representation part of it, I just think the writing is amazing. I love the acting, and I love Brett Chan and his team of action. I respected that from the get-go, and And I think actually Brett was the first one I had on my show from the team, because I looked at it from an action aspect, because I'm a bit picky these days with my action, and there's a little bit of a fatigue, right? That has set in. Whereas like growing up, everything was kung fu movies. I think in the last decade, I don't really watch too many kung fu movies. People are always like, did you watch this? I was like, no.
Okay.
But I think it's the fatigue, right? And when I saw this, I was like, gosh, the choreography is incredible. So that is actually why I started to reach out to the Warrior team, just as I'm like, I want to talk to him. And everything, it hits on all the notes. I think it's just really great, well-rounded character development. And also now that I know a lot of these actors, they're just amazing, lovely humans on every level. So I support this show, obviously, as you do. And I'm really hoping for that season 4. So everybody make sure you're binge watching, doing the double thumbs up, posting on social media. I'm really hopeful for it. I mean, it is the show that keeps coming back. So it's got, 9 lives. So I think we still have more to go.
Absolutely. It just won't die, and we're so grateful for that. And I'm with you. It's the storytelling as well as the action for me. And I told Perry the same thing. I'm like, listen, I love it, but I also was a Jonathan Tropper fan because I used to love that show Banshee that he did years ago. So I kind of just followed along, and a lot of like Hoon Lee was on that show. So I was just like always a fan of his. Yeah. So it's like, and I'm same with you. I'm wishing for season 4. All right. So my last couple questions going to be rapid fire, and we'll wrap things up. I call them my 5 crucial questions for Kung Fu Masters.
So I think it's simplistic to say training was harder back when I was learning, but I think it's because our Wah Lum basics and forms haven't really changed, right? Like, so our classes and our structure is exactly the same. We bison at the beginning, we do all the same things, but I think people have changed. I think as Sifus, we have more information and knowledge. And with that, I hope it means we train smarter and healthier versus just pushing past that injury and no pain, no gain mentality. I think hopefully we've moved out of, because we would rather people be doing this for longevity. And I think students have changed because there's so much more distraction. People are sitting in chairs longer. They are a little more, I believe, physically deconditioned because of the environment in which that we live, with eye devices and computer access and all of that. So I think that it makes training different, right? Like, you have to adapt to who you're working with. And I think because of that, it's not that the training has changed or it's harder back then. It's just, I think we train in a different way because we could, right? At that time. So I think like anything, there's like a yin and yang to all the situations. I get asked this a lot, but in different ways, right? Like, what's the difference, or which one's better? And I'm like, I don't know. Do you like coffee or tea, right? Like, it's whatever you like is all you. So I don't know that I see it as so much of a controversy. I think it depends who you're talking to. But I think if anything or anyone gets a bad reputation, a lot of time that comes from the absence of humility. And so people who brag about their fighting skills, maybe throw them on YouTube and says, I'm a Kung Fu master. Also, people, I think, who have been exposed as stating they can do these things they cannot in this mythical way, like
access denied, all while maintaining prayer hands.
Kung Fu is a real thing. It doesn't have to be this, magical, mythical art. And so I feel like that is what really gets a bad reputation. But in all honesty, in traditional Kung Fu systems like Wah Lum, I can really only speak on my style's behalf, but we learn fighting aspects, of course. There's sparring and there's striking. We don't focus on full contact fighting. If I honestly had someone come in and said, this is all I want to do, I would direct them to an MMA school where that is all that they would get to do, because I want to make sure they are getting what they've come in to ask for. I don't try to sell them on my program. I want people to be there because they want some of the fighting aspects, because they want to learn philosophy of our style. They want to learn the tradition. They want to learn how to lead a healthy lifestyle. My father always said Kung Fu's not just for fighting it's to live a long life, but live a long, healthy life. And we talked earlier that he could run up those poles in his 70s, and in his 80s, he's like running around the temple and still cleaning up. And I want to be able to move, right? Like that's my goal, but that's my goal, right? That's not everyone's goal. So if I'm an MMA fighter or martial arts fighter, that's all they're doing is fighting, I hope that they're very good at it, because that's what they're practicing all the time, right? Like that is their goal. Like if someone practices the piano all the time, I'm hoping that they get better at practicing piano. So if we fight all the time, and that's the core of it, I'm not saying they don't do other things, but all of the other things, the cross training and everything from what I've seen, the people that I know, like it's specifically so that they get in the ring or octagon, whatever it is, and they fight, right? Like that is their goal.
Let them fight.
So if you're comparing somebody who trains twice a week at a Kung Fu class that doesn't do fighting every class, it's a totally different, you can't really compare those. And then lastly, but I define a fighter or someone who's fighting as probably something very different than just a Kung Fu, right? Like I have cancer survivors in my class. I have sexual abuse survivors in my class. I have people with multiple strokes, and I have people who have special needs. A lot of adults and kids with special needs. Like they're fighters to me, right? And so there's such a different terminology for all these things. But I think a lot of it comes down to a lot of humility as well. Absolutely. Otherwise, I'm just doing all of them for no reason. No. Obviously in Wah Lum, especially because we have like a zillion forms. Sometimes I say to my dad, like, couldn't we have just had like 12 or 20, not like 100 million? Like there's just pages of forms and weapons. It's like, no, you must learn all the weapons. But I like to describe our forms as our ability and a way of expression. It's like the soul of our Kung Fu. And I think the reason we practice is because of that poetry and expression, and then that preservation of the style. And it's like remembering the poems, because the forms are actual poems, right? And so it's like if we don't preserve that, then, we're losing education, we're losing part of history. But also when we learn to move with martial intent, it means we're memorizing movements and sequence patterning, and that actually benefits your brain by enhancing that pattern recognition, and it fosters balance as well as engaging. I'm not a scientist, but I spoke to a really amazing psychologist who's also a Wah Lum Sifu, and she told me about how it engages both hemispheres and practices cross-body movements with strengthens concentration and cognitive function, and that aids in stress management and teaching our body to stay calm under pressure. So there's so much benefit on not just the physical side, but also, from the preservation standpoint. Mulan. No, I'm just kidding.
Get ready, Mulan. Your 17 salvation is at hand.
The animated or live? So now
animated.
Don't talk with your mouth full. Now let's see your war face.
No, so this is really tough. I hate the favorites, so I'm going to give you kind of a top 3. Like, obvious answer from anyone in my age range is Drunken Master 2 because of the things, right? Because of all of it, right? Like, anybody just says it, so that's like a throwaway. But I have a lot of love for the legendary weapons of China, because they use like all the traditional weapons that you don't always get to see, and I just love anything that has a 30-minute fight scene in Shaw Brothers at the end. And then as a kid, I loved Kids from Shaolin because it showed the girl part of the river, the girls who trained, and then the boys. And I felt like I was finally seeing myself represented, because there was little Kung Fu girls, doing Kung Fu and lion dancing and things. And I think that is a really fond memory, because there's just so little of that in between that, right? So from that movie to on, you don't really get to kind of see that as much. You have to really search for it. And so that was always one that was kind of like in my heart from when I was young. I think this is the same answer I give any of my college students who's like, here's what I want to do. I think I say, make sure you know your why. So there's a really great book. I think it's Simon Sinek's, Start with Why, and just kind of really asking yourself why you want to teach and making sure that that's a good answer for yourself. Like for me, a lot of people just want to be the Sifu or the master, and I don't know if they understand like what that means, but I know for myself, you mentioned earlier as well, like remembering you're a student first. is really important. That's helped me a lot personally. But on a professional level, like on a business, do you want to do this for your career? Just know it takes a lot of hard work. And that is Kung Fu. But right. If this is going to be your main source of income, like meticulously research your market and understand who your potential students are and to be really adaptable.
Sifu Mimi Chan, thank you so much for doing this. This was a lot of fun. This was a lot of fun.
Yes.
So, really quickly, just give people information if they want to reach out to you as far as like the Wah Lum Temple and how to train if they're interested.
Absolutely. So I am at Sifu Mimi Chan on all the social media things. I'm not great at the social media things, but you can certainly reach me there. I do post some stuff, especially from my podcast, lots of reels from all the lovely humans that agree to talk to me. And of course, the Wah Lum Temple is at wahlum.com. That's WAHLUM.com, where you can learn about our temple and if there's a school near you as well. But thank you so much. And my podcast is on both YouTube as well as all your podcast channels. So thanks for having me.
Yes. Okay, all right. That's a whole lot of Kung Fu going on with Sifu Mimi. And let me know if you guys enjoyed that. Comment down below and let me know if you learned something new about Sifu Mimi and or the Wah Lum system. Okay, guys, don't forget to follow me on all my socials here and everywhere, as you know, so you can stay up to date on all the behind the scenes goodies. And make sure you hit up that Patreon if you guys would like to see even more content. And hey, while you're here, go ahead and check out a couple of other videos you're probably going to be into. Guys, stay safe. See you all in the next round. And as usual, keep punching.
It's Sifu Mimi Chan here. Thank you so much for watching Kung Fu Chronicles.